I hopped on the rocks like she did until I knelt at the edge of the 20-foot-wide pond. Then I flipped off my hat while inspecting the surface for anything that was going to try to eat me. I didn't see anything remotely like a giant crocodile, so I dipped my hand into the cool stream and then drank my fill right from the source. The clear water was way more satisfying than my almost fatal drink from the dirty lake, and a million times better than the tease I got out of the cup back in the cave. I tried to limit myself, but I was so thirsty I drank until I felt it slosh inside me. I submerged the clay pot into the clear water, and dozens of tiny, colorful fish scattered. The orange light of the late evening sun reflected off their scales, so they glittered like coins. The rocky bottom was also lit up by the soft light, and I imagined walking the refreshing knee-deep water to the other side. Maybe Sheila could step in, and we'd both fall over and get sopping wet. She already wore a bikini.
We must go.
Sheila interrupted my fantasy after she took a moment to drink from the pond at my side.
Back home, we have many streams like this one, so I would enjoy staying on the shore longer. However, it is too dangerous. We must return.
Yeah, I said with a nod. I lifted the now-filled pot and followed her back across the boulders. When we reached the shore, I one-handed my hat off the ground, expertly slapped it over my head, and balanced the unwieldy pot while we made our way back to the fallen redwood. "You've been doing this by yourself?" I asked after we were safely concealed inside the hollowed-out tree.
I did what needed to be done, but fetching water is easier with your help. I'm glad you are here.
Sheila gave me another half-smile, and I finally felt my heart hammer for a reason other than fear. She may have been a tough warrior cat woman, but I was proud I'd made her happy. Her words soothed my anxiety, but I was still a bit nervous about the next part of our trip. "How do you not spill this?" I asked as I looked down at the clay pot. I figured there was maybe half a gallon of water in there. I'd filled it right to the brim, but I'd already spilled an inch in the first 30 feet of travel.
There's no effective way to seal it. I've tried bark and leaves. Gal mine even made a nice clay lid for it, but it broke. Once the water begins to slosh, it escapes anything I used to cover it.
I looked at it as a problem to solve. On some TV show, I heard of ancient hunters using the bladders of animals to carry water. Or maybe I saw it in one of the billions of internet videos I'd watched. The details of my life kind of ran together over the last several years. What I did know was that there had to be a better way to get water to camp than what Sheila and I were trying to do.
Are you ready?
She asked, calling me back to the moment. "Let's do this," I responded. Sheila hopped out of the downed trunk with all 3 spears in her hands and set off toward the cave at a trot. I tried to follow through the clumps of ferns as quickly as I could, but carrying an open pot of sloshing water really slowed me down. I kept my eyes on the ground just in front of me and focused hard on steadying my arms to keep the pot from swaying. She stopped to check for predators, but I didn't even have a chance to catch my breath before she indicated we had to move on.
This way,
she whispered over her shoulder as she took off. Everything looked the same in the forest. The largest trees were like pillars of brown stone in a giant room sealed by a pine needle roof. Smaller trees filled in some of the gaps, but much of the forest floor was wide open. It was easier to cross those flat spaces, but it also exposed us to potential predators. Somehow Sheila knew where to go, and I stayed focused on my own job of not tossing out our drinking water. At the next big tree, Sheila let me rest for a moment.
I'm taking us a little to the side of the cave,
she explained.
If something follows us out here, I do not want to lead them right to our home.
I wanted to tell her how impressed I was with her hunter instincts, but I couldn't catch my breath, so I used my time to take off my hat and wipe sweat from my forehead. Fast walking home with the pot was as draining to me as jogging to the creek without it, and my lack of fitness wasn't doing me any favors. I put my hat back on and smiled.
We are almost there, Victor. Next time, I will carry the water,
she said with a grin. Deal, I huffed. We left that piece of safety, and I soon saw the familiar shape of the hill and ridgeline above our cave. There were fewer big trees on the slope, but more of the smaller ones. Back home, tree cover meant nothing to me. Here it could save my life, so I was starting to notice the small details of terrain. Sheila led us along the bottom edge of the slope, and I walked as fast as I could to keep up with her. A sigh of relief left my throat when I caught sight of the familiar rocks outside the cave. We were almost back, and would be safe in the cave in less than a minute. I froze in my tracks when I glanced up and saw that Sheila had stopped a few yards ahead of me. She stayed in her stance for a little while until she motioned for me to come up to her. I tried to walk as silently as I could, but leaves crackled under my feet like a marching band drum line. When I reached her, she pointed to the rocky outcropping about 100 feet ahead.
The bird dinosaur we saw in the trees has landed at the base of the ramp. It is moving toward the cave. We must hurry and protect our friends.
Got it. I'm your shadow. My voice cracked a bit, and my heart somehow increased its already fast tempo. I didn't really want to fight another dinosaur, especially with a pot full of water in my hands. She gave me a sideways glance, and then took off toward the cave in full-on Amazon warrior mode. I followed at a slower pace so I could alternate between looking ahead for trouble and down to my hands to steady the sloshing water. I finally saw the dinosaur when I got closer. It blended into the underbrush on the hillside, but was definitely now on the ramp, and heading toward the entrance of the cave. Almost like it knew the territory had been vacated by those most able to defend it. When Sheila saw the intruder, she waved a spear and screamed to get its attention. The pterodactyl kind of lumbered around like I had seen bats do. It hunched over the elbows of its wings. The dino belted out a surprised squawk as it hopped up and started flying to get away from her. Dust blew from the side of the path, and the creature slowly climbed into the sky before the blonde woman could get too close. Sheila dropped 2 of her spears, twisted her right arm back, and hurled her javelin at the flapping lizard. It was an impressive display of athleticism, but the dinosaur was already 30 feet in the air, and Sheila's spear fell short and sailed just under its feet. The beast seemed to understand that Sheila had almost hit it, and it let out a screech as it circled above her. "It looks like it might try to dive!" I shouted as I weaved my way through the trees of the hillside. As I reached the spears Sheila left behind, the pterodactyl fell through the leafy canopy like it had been dropped from a plane. It smashed through several branches and snapped them like dried twigs. At the last possible second, the pterodactyl threw open its broad wings and came to a hover just a few feet over Sheila's head. The down thrust of wind blew Sheila's long hair around, and it looked like part of the mane covered her face. "Sheila, above you!" The blonde woman dove away an instant before the razor beak would have impaled her. The Catwoman rolled a few yards, got back to her feet, and hopped behind the trunk of a small tree. The pterodactyl made another dive toward her, but its wings were so large it could not fly under the low branches. It was the perfect defensive spot, and she was able to avoid its attacks. The animal screamed in apparent frustration, beat its wings a few more times, and then circled back to land on the hillside close to Sheila. As soon as it landed, its leathery wings folded on each side so they became the odd-looking legs again. The dino didn't appear quite as scary on the ground as it did in the air, but now could easily walk into the clump of trees where Sheila had retreated. Without a weapon, it wouldn't be easy to keep that sharp beak from poking her. She needed my help. "Hey! Over here!" I shouted at the pterodactyl as I set the pot on some flat ground and then picked up one of Sheila's discarded spears. "Get away from her!" I yelled as I sprinted toward it. I didn't know how to fight a winged dinosaur from the Jurassic era, but I did know how to deal with rabid animals back home when they threatened humans. I closed the distance with my spear extended and cursed for all I was worth. When I was within spear range, I got a good look at its black eyes and the thin brown crest sticking backward from the top of its head. Maybe it could see into my eyes too and knew I meant business because the creature spread its wings again and launched off the ground with a hop and several quick wing flaps. A few moments later, the pterodactyl had gotten about 10 feet in the air, and it was pumping its wings frantically to escape. I mimicked Sheila as I threw the long spear with as much muscle as I could put behind it. The primitive weapon hit the center of the monster's chest, but I'd put a little tilt in my throw and the sharpened point didn't penetrate the flying lizard's tough skin. The creature screamed nonetheless, and I swear he flapped 10 times harder to get away. The spear cartwheeled down and came to rest in a bush. I flipped on my IQ and requested info for the flying dinosaur before it could get too far away. Identification: pterosaur, Pteranodon longiceps, female. I blinked off the IQ just as Sheila stepped out from under her protective tree. She appeared ready for another attack, but her hair was a tangled mess and bits of dirt clung to her already ruined bikini. Instead of a spear, the Catwoman held an egg-sized rock in her palm while scanning above us. I felt kind of dumb thinking she was unarmed because everything was a potential weapon to her.
That was an excellent throw, Victor.
Yeah, but I didn't kill it, I replied with a bit of regret.
We will never be able to kill everything on this planet. Sometimes it is enough to chase the enemy from the field of battle.
Sheila dropped the rock so she could pick up the fallen spear. The dinosaur flapped back to its perch in the tree, but it concerned me it wasn't leaving. My IQ said that's a female pterosaur, but we call them pterodactyls back home, I said as I pointed to the creature. You think she'll try for us again? Since Sheila held the spear, I picked up the rock she'd set down so I had some sort of weapon.
I would not be surprised,
Sheila said as we walked back to the water container.
She might wish to lay her eggs in the cave.
Well, she's gonna have to get in line, I said with nervous laughter. Somehow we've become the hottest spot in town. I was relieved to find the water pot was upright and mostly filled. I pocketed my throwing rock before picking up the clay container. Sheila grabbed the other spear and we turned back. We both kept our eyes on the pterosaur as we hurried up the ramp to the cave, but the winged animal seemed content to preen herself rather than fight us again. But she was one more problem for us. There were now 2 species threatening to cause trouble in our neighborhood. Sheila went right inside our cave, but I stopped and looked into the forest one final time. What other monsters were looking to move in?